Today on the Forgiven Nutritionist podcast, I'm talking with Crystal Tipton. She's an accomplished clinic outreach manager at the Amen Clinics, which is based out of Hollywood, Florida. She excels in promoting brain health and innovative treatments for a variety of neuropsychiatric, behavioral, and learning issues. She brings a wealth of experience in clinical assessment, critical thinking, and crisis stabilization, along with a strong background in counseling and substance use disorders. Her expertise is also in transforming mental health and addiction treatment. On today's episode, we touch on some deep and dark experiences with depression and suicide. So please listen carefully and watch the listening ears that may be around you. Here's a clip from today's show.
And again, you're not spinning your wheels. And I think that's what's so sad these days is I see people coming just barely with any hope in life anymore because they've been to every doctor. They've been on 5 or 6 medications. They've been through treatment. They've been to therapists, they're therapied to death and they still feel broken. And that's not okay because there are answers out there. And Doc's right. I mean, we don't know till we look. I found answers before SPECT, but we see a lot of people today that are just, again, like you said, I mean, we hang on to every commercial, every social reel, everything that's out there that looks flashy and good. And then when it doesn't work, then we're back to, well, what's wrong with me and why am I so broken?
Hey everyone, just a quick break to show some gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. BrainMD nutraceuticals are high-quality supplements specifically designed to support and enhance brain health. Developed by Dr. Daniel Amen and his team of experts, these supplements use carefully selected ingredients backed by scientific research to promote cognitive function, mood stability, and overall mental wellness. BrainMD's commitment to purity and efficacy assures that their supplements provide targeted nutrition for the optimal brain performance and long-term brain health. Be sure to click my link in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Crystal. I'm so happy you're on tonight.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you. Finally.
Yes. Well, I'm definitely a little familiar with you because we now work together at the Amen Clinics, but why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, hi, everyone. My name's Crystal. And like Wendy said, we have the honor of working together at Amen Clinics, which I'm really excited to do that kind of work every day. It's near and dear to my heart. I've been in the holistic mental health field pretty much all my life. I was almost killed in a car accident. I had a near-death experience, and at that time was, given the calling to help others, and that's what I've done for the majority of my life in different aspects, but mainly in what we now call the brain health world and the addiction world, and just have been very fluid in that, and also have worked through tremendous trauma in my own life, both because of my car accident and really horrible relationships and abuse and just things that took me to the brink of almost taking my own life and thinking that there wasn't any hope, to a very fulfilled, happy, balanced, I think more importantly, balanced life now, and very enriched life that, I know is out there for everyone. It's just a matter of the journey, right?
Yeah. Well, and I know recently you and I both recorded some things for when Dr. Amen had a birthday, and we all recorded a little clip about one of the things that kind of sticks with us or things that we learned from Dr. Amen. And at the time I had put, you're not stuck with the brain you have, because that's one of the things that I think that people just think, like, especially when they get a diagnosis, they're stuck. And it doesn't even have to be just with brain health. They're stuck with whatever it is. It could be diabetes. It could be high blood pressure. It could be whatever, rheumatoid arthritis. They just think that they're stuck with it. And I always add the caveat to it, if you do nothing, because you're not stuck with it, unless you do nothing, you're not always stuck with it. But I think the biggest one that really stuck with me that kind of goes along with what we're talking about tonight, and that's if you heal your brain, your mind will follow.
Exactly.
And until that really happened for me, I really didn't understand what the bejesus anyone would have been talking about when they said that. But yeah, when you heal your brain, whether you have to look at it just like any other injury. You know, if you get a cut on your arm, once that's healed, your arm can heal, work better, your leg can heal better and work better. So when you heal your brain, your mind will follow. And so you'll be less anxious, you'll be less stressed, you'll be just a whole slew of things. It's a ripple effect, right? That just works to the better.
Yes. And it's a journey, and it's not always fun. You know, I think that's the misconception. You know, we want everything in the microwave. You know, we live in a microwave generation, a sitcom generation. We can, you know, watch a half-hour show and it starts out great and goes to hell in a handbasket and ends great and wonderful. And, you know, we kind of want that. And it's not always like that. It's a very up and down journey at times, but there can be stability. And there should be. And there are going to be, you know, life is going to life, right? But I think that when we're in the midst of struggles, it's really hard to see that. I know for me it was really hard to, you know, put aside like the shame and the guilt and all the things that you feel when life isn't happening for you. You feel like it's happening against you. And it is a matter of flipping the switch and learning to look at things differently and ask the better questions. And because, you know, your brain's also going to give you an answer to the question you ask. So you've got to learn to ask better questions, right? And we don't teach that in society. We just slap labels on people and, you know, give them, you know, a little, you know, a pill or whatever that's supposed to make them feel better. And then when that doesn't happen, then it's what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? Why can't I get it together? And I think that was one of the most underlying things I used to see in treatment all the time. And because I witnessed it on my own as a kid, I always came from that, like, well, you know, did the addiction or the depression start before this, or did it happen together? Or, you know, I was always asking questions that people were kind of like, why are you asking that? You know, but again, it started to create this ripple effect of people being willing to see and look at things differently. And I think that's a big key thing, because you got to get out of your own self long enough to be able to see it differently. And that you can't be the victim in your own story and expect you to be the victor at the end of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. That's perfectly said too, because we do get, you know, trapped in that. And unfortunately, I don't think enough people want to be the victor at the end. They're still stuck in that mentality of being the victim.
Yeah,
you know?
we get attached to being the victim. We get attached to what that brings to us. I think, you know, Tony Robbins said it best. You know, we all have the human needs, and, you know, there's 6 of them, and we have 2 that we operate in, that those are hierarchies. So we always go back to, you know, to those in the way that we get those. And so if being a victim brings us love and connection, then that's where we're going to stay, because we haven't learned how to get love and connection in any other way. And so, again, that goes back to asking questions differently, you know, asking the better questions, and being willing to be vulnerable to what it is that is making you feel like that victim. And that's really hard sometimes, you know, being vulnerable is hard, especially, you know, when you've maybe come from a place where you've had to be the tough kid or the strong one or the one that keeps it all together, you know, whatever your role was in the family, you know, it can kind of make it hard. And that's, you know, that's kind of where I was at, you know, as the oldest, but through the accident and through the trauma of that, I kind of had to put my big girl panties on and just go, because things were dramatically different after that. My life was never going to be the same. Neither was my family. But in that, I held on to that label that I put on myself, and I would say the torch I thought I needed to carry, too strong. And then that led to other, me being in situations that, weren't good for me. And then I didn't know how to get out of them. And then when I did, I beat myself up about it. And so it became a vicious cycle. And I see that all the time. We buy into the label that we've been given, and we become the victim in our own story. And we feel like the season we're in is a sentence for the life of, for our entire life. And we can't get jolted enough to get out of that mentality to shake us up. And, but that's where I feel like rock bottoms come, and, near death, experiences come, and all of these, I'll call them God moments, come to get us at a point where we have to wake up and open our eyes and blink a little differently. And even if it's just for a moment, once we know the truth, we can't go back. So, we can lie to other people, but we'll never be able to lie to ourselves. But it's the fact that you feel different, and you know that something's different, and that there is something greater out there, and there's something more than what you have been in the midst of. And I think that, today, a lot of people are out there feeling really in those moments of just, I don't know what to do. And society just really makes us feel like we're broken and that there is no fixing it. When I came to Amen Clinics and I learned about Dr. Amen and the brain work that he does, immediately I just felt so sad for my dad, because, my dad had a short-term head injury, and he lost 10 years of his life. And he didn't know even who I was when he first saw me coming out of his coma. And he was basically sent home with nothing. There's nothing we can do. There's no rehab. There's no way to make things better. That was in 1987. And all these years we've had someone like Dr. Amen around, changing people's brains and lives. And my dad went without that opportunity because he didn't know.
Right.
And so I'm very passionate about people being vulnerable and willing to get out of their own way, because life is really happening for you. It's not happening against you. It's just really hard to get that when you're in the middle of it. And I get that, because I have been suicidal. I have wanted to take my life. I have been at the point where I thought, I'm a complete failure. And how could I have let these things happen in my life, to myself, to my kids? How could I have disappointed God so much that I've let this happen? Mm-hmm. And it's not because I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, but it was because I had just been engulfed in a lot of things that created an insurmountable amount of victimhood and trauma in my life that also bled into my kids feeling that. And I felt so guilty for it. And I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how to break, the generational curses and the chains that I felt like were on me. And I didn't even know how they came about, because I knew in my heart that wasn't God's will for me. It wasn't like I was a bad person. I was meant to come here and just completely mess life up and F everything away to the point that, people just kind of wrote me off. But I didn't know how, and it just took step by step. It took being willing, like I said, it took hitting rock bottom. It took someone intervening at a really pivotal time and saying, you matter. And, what's going on? Let's get this fixed, for me to find the help that I needed, and it also took strangely enough, a medical issue that led me to a chiropractor that did kinesiology that, put me back together in more ways than one. And on the other side of that, I came out stronger than I would have ever have been. But I thank God for those times now, because those were the times, like I said, those were God winks. And I know people are out there today that are, they're in the pit of hell, and they feel like it's all their fault, or that, they did something wrong to deserve what's happened to them. Or they feel extremely guilty. I just had a friend that committed suicide who owned a treatment facility. And he just, I know, felt so guilty about the fact that things had fallen apart on the back end, and there was no way for him to fix it, no matter how hard he tried. And he felt like he let everybody down, and he felt like there was no way out. And, there's always a way. I've learned that from 2 brushes of almost taking my own life and all the things that have happened to me. I've learned that there's always a way. It's just not always right there and, easily laid out for you. It's almost like the old saying goes, it's not what people say. What people say is none of your business. And the ending is really none of your business either, because God's got it. And it's hard for people who don't have faith, either. But you got to have faith in something, even if it's a doorknob, and that it'll turn and open the door. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And I know how that is as well when you're in the throes of the overwhelm and the feelings of someone when I was talking with someone literally last week, and I've mentioned this too, it feels like a swirling drain, and eventually you get closer and closer and closer to that drain, and it just starts swirling faster. And once you go down that drain, you can't always come back up out of it, and it's very difficult to stop yourself. And I remember for me, when I had experienced that, I literally had to force myself to do a lot of things because, you don't feel like going even just to the grocery store, but I literally forced myself just to do little things like that, because I knew if I stayed in my apartment, as much as I loved the apartment because I didn't have to deal with people or things or whatever, it was just not going to be good, because that's only got me closer to that swirling drain. And I don't know how it was for you, but for me, when I had, I don't think I tried to attempt suicide, but I just wanted peace. I wanted to stop feeling how I was feeling. I wanted to stop feeling like a failure. I just wanted to stop feeling like I was going crazy. There was a bunch of things going on in my life as well. So I just wanted the peace. I didn't want to feel that turmoil and everything that was kind of that undercurrent. The water looked calm on the outside, but there was all that undercurrent going on the inside, which was the internal struggle. And I just wanted to feel like the undercurrent matched the top of the water view as well, and I know that other people feel like that too. And it's hard to feel like that other people understand or get it when they're going through that, because you feel so alone, especially nowadays when everybody's got social media and Instagram and everything looks like everyone's life is so great. Nobody posts the crap that they go through, so it is a very real struggle with perception and reality, I think, especially now, because when I was going through that, I was just thinking about this the other day. It was 19 years ago now. So, I'm 19 years now out of it. And I too am on the outside of it. Like, in looking back, I too recognize that it was completely 100% God, like you said. Because I don't think if I hadn't have gone through what I've gone through, I wouldn't be here today where I am. And I get to help people now too, not just at the Amen clinics, but in my daily life as well, on evenings and weekends. I get to help people and talk to people about things. And hopefully one person is listening to us talk about this, and realizing, okay, who can I reach out to help, get help? Because maybe there's something I'm supposed to be doing or learning from this. And of course, back at the time, again, when I was going through what I was going through, who thinks, oh, I'm supposed to be learning something now? or
Right.
there's going to be a bigger picture that I'm going to be a part of, you know?
Mhm.
So what do you think you want other people to understand about that experience of feeling suicidal or hopeless? Do you have any insights for that, at least from your perspective?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, pain is part of life. And some of us have been through more pain than we care to ever talk about. Um, and like I said, lives, but pain is not our fault, but the healing is our responsibility.
Mm.
And we all come here with a plan for our life that's put out before us. And God always knows the things that we're going to go through. Somebody's what's key to somebody about us is really our testimony that will be the fruit that is going to be planted. And it's really hard, yes, to see that in the moment, but God doesn't make mistakes, you know, and everybody is a masterpiece and everybody has a purpose. And when you can start asking, well, what's my effing purpose then? You could be mad because of the situation you're in and in the season that you're in, but you can't let that season, and you shouldn't let it define your lifetime, your legacy. There has to be enough fighter in you, and there is, to say that's enough. Like, what am I here for? I know I wasn't brought here just to suffer and then for it to be over. I mean, that's not even like, who does that, right? Unless you just choose to. But I mean, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. When I walked into Dr. Old's office in 2003, I was at another really pivotal point in my life where I was like, you were just saying, I just wanted it. I wanted peace. I was so broken and so traumatized in my own head and my emotions and my body that I just wanted some peace. And I had a severe headache that day. And I knew that Doc could fix the headache. And so I went in to see him for that. But I didn't want to talk about anything else because, again, I'm the girl that puts the big girl panties on and just does whatever, right? And so I'm the suck it up like a buttercup. I'm the don't whine about it, kid who turned into an adult that then didn't talk about the problems. And I'll never forget it because, I walked in and you know how you think you look like you're halfway look okay, but you look like crap. And anyone in their right mind could tell something was not okay with you. But you definitely were going to get pissed off if somebody brought it to your attention that you didn't look okay, because how dare they even talk about you not looking okay because you don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he looked at me, I knew immediately, like, oh crap, like he can already see something's going on and I don't want to talk about it. I just want you to get rid of the headache so I can go. And it's almost like a drug addict. You go in and you're like, look, I don't need you to tell me anything. I just need you to give me what I need so I can feel better and I can be out of here. And so in a way, I was looking for my little fix, like just fix my headache and let me go on my miserable way. And so he was fixing the headache and his wife was with him. And he looked at me and he said, you know that I can help you if you let me. And I was like, okay. And he said, but you have to be willing to let me. And I just kind of looked at him like, well, I don't really know what that means. And so he said, there's something that I can do with you today that would really help. I believe it would really help you. He said, do you trust me? And I almost started to cry because obviously I trusted this man a lot. And I felt safe with him in a weird way. And again, that was a God thing. God backdoored me to him over some candida that I thought was going to kill me, and ended up being candida, that was causing me to be very sick, by the way. And nobody else could figure out what was wrong with me. I had 2 hospital stays, an emergency room visit, and, all these things. It was crazy. But long story short, he did what you call neuromotive therapy on me that day. It's called NET. And I broke down. I couldn't even say my name. And it was the first breakthrough that I officially had ever had to get to the root of all the trauma and all the stuff stuff that I didn't even know was there, because your subconscious just holds so much, and then your body holds it all. And then that manifests into other things. So, I think that you have to be willing to be vulnerable and to ask for help, even if it's to someone like you that's a friend, and just say, hey, you know what? I'm not okay today. I don't really know what to do about it. And maybe it just starts with someone listening and letting you know that it's okay to not be okay, because that in itself is very healing and freeing, and allows you to kind of, understand and come to a place where you feel safe enough to start opening that Pandora's box, even though you're scared to death of what might be really there, if that makes sense. But I can tell you that, I haven't had EMDR, I haven't had neurofeedback, I haven't had, hyperbaric, a lot of the things that people talk about today. It was truly the NET and, some supplements that really freed me. And again, my willingness and my desire and the fight within me to not let whatever that was win. I just didn't want to let it win. I think I started to look at, I'm not going to let this take me out, because I'm better than this. And little by little through that journey, I became stronger and better. But, in my journey, just like you said earlier, sometimes you crave for people to understand. And what I've come to realize, and I've said this for the last at least 2 decades, is you really don't want someone to understand. I think after my accident, I never wanted someone to understand what it felt like to go through what I had gone through. To essentially have my father physically present, but not emotionally or mentally the person he was as if I had lost him. To have lost a part of my, teenage years I would never get back. To have learned how to roll over and sit up and walk and do things all over again, while all my friends were out having parties and dating and doing the fun things. I never wanted anyone to know and understand what that felt like. And I knew in order for them to know and understand, they would have to walk in my shoes. And so I always tell people, I think what you really want is for someone to have some compassion and to give you some grace, because it's life is going to life, and there are going to be times where you're not okay, and it's okay that you're not. But you don't want people to understand, because then they would have had to have walked through what you're walking through and what you've walked through. And I think that also helps people, because at the end of the day, you don't want anyone to ever be in the hell you're in, even as miserable as you can get. And you can say, well, I wish, blah, blah, blah. Deep down, you don't really want that.
Right.
So I was, again, I think for people on this call, you've got to start asking those questions to yourself. What if everything has happened up until now has been practice? What if everything, that's been happening for me is trying to show me, a different way to look at things? What if there was something that I could do that could release this trauma? and these thoughts. And that was the biggest thing NET did. It let those thoughts go. Those thoughts played over and over in my subconscious so much that then they spilled over into my conscious, you know? So it's not, they have to play a lot before you know that they're there. And then when you know they're there, they're so loud you can't shut them up. And so oftentimes what we want to do is we want to drink till we can't think. We want to use a drug till we can't think. We want to, do whatever till we can't think. All the way up to then we graduate to, well, maybe I should just take my life and then I won't think. Mm-hmm. And yet there's a lot of answers out there that can do that for you. And then you don't have to keep going back into those old cycles. And I remember early on, there'd be times where I would do great for 6 months and then all of a sudden something would happen. And I would just automatically, like, my whole body, I would get those, the whole demeanor would come on me where I knew I wasn't okay. And I would go to doc and I would be like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I wish I knew, but I'm not okay. Like, I don't know if I want to hurt someone or if I just want to do something I shouldn't do to myself. And so we would do more NET. And sure enough, we would find something that had triggered an old thought, an old feeling, an old trauma that I didn't know was still hidden somewhere that just needed to find its way out. And so I began to look at it that way. Like, if I was feeling in a funk, then why is that? Do I need to eat? Do I need to get some sleep? Are my hormones out of balance? What is it? Or is this been a trigger for me in one way, shape, or form? And instead of being mad at it or trying to shove it down and suppress it, then I started going to that method and releasing it and setting it free so I could be free. And that was very freeing to me. And it's so funny that it was so simple, and then that led to other parts of my journey that, just allowed me, I feel like, to be the advocate, the activator, the person of grace and compassion that I am today, that I wouldn't have been otherwise. But I had to be willing to do the work, right? I had to be willing to be vulnerable, to let someone know that I wasn't okay. Or at least if they knew I wasn't okay, I had to be willing and vulnerable enough to say, you're right, I'm not okay. So now what? Even if I was pissed off about that, which I, oftentimes would be, because I didn't deep down want to be the victim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And, that's, sometimes I think that for as complex as things can be in the world, we make things harder, I think, than they really need to be. And sometimes you just need to get down to some of the simple things. Not that they're going to be easy, because again, like you said, we have to put in the work, which is sometimes the hardest thing. And especially to unlearn habits that we've acquired and done for so many years now, to compensate or to readjust what we're doing to avoid certain things, or, to just overcompensate. And so that is where things can get hard. But again, the things that you can do, like you said, do I need to eat? Sometimes it's just that you're not eating enough things with vitamin C and you have low vitamin C. I have a client who's experiencing that. She doesn't have any vitamin C. And so it could be little things like that again, that can be so simple, but it's not easy to do, because again, you have to do the work. Yeah. And you have to be consistent and show up. And that's where it gets hard, is when we get in our own way and we have to step in and practice doing that.
Yeah. And we can let the stigma and our own stinking thinking, get in our way big time. And I did that. I would go in and see Doc, and he would start doing adjustments on me, and he would say, are you taking your 5-HTP? And I'd be like, no. And he would be like, why not? And I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. I was feeling okay. And, I could probably go without 5-HTP for, at that time, maybe a week. And then I would be going to crazy town every day, wondering what was wrong. And, he would always know. And then I would say, well, I was doing okay. And I see that a lot too. We start doing well because we're doing the things we need to do. And then when we feel well, then we stop doing those things. And then we wonder why a little bit later we're not well. And it's also the same thing of sometimes we just get stuck and we don't do the next thing that we know we need to do. But sure enough, I would, start taking my 5-HTP and, but part of that was that my mom was on a lot of medications and I didn't want to be on a lot of medications. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be that person. And that's why I didn't go to the doctor. That's why I didn't go to a professional therapist because I was in the field. I didn't want people in the field talking about me because that's what they do. And I didn't want to be on medications because I didn't want the label. And so I wasn't contributing to my own, well-being because of my own stubbornness and my own, thoughts about what that looked like. Of course, going to doc, I was private paying a chiropractor and he was giving me supplements. So, it wasn't medication and I wasn't going to therapy. But again, I still, because I just didn't want to take medicine, was reluctant to be consistent with just a supplement. And so I had to go through that journey and it's the same thing with food, with exercise, with anything that you're doing, you're going to feel better in some respects. But you have to stay consistent and you have to ebb and flow too. You have to be willing to ebb and flow with what that looks like and give yourself some grace and, but also don't, make up so many excuses that, you're copping out on the things that you need to do. So I think having someone in your corner, that can kind of be your accountability partner to say, hey, I noticed you're a little off today. Did you work out this morning? Have you had that protein shake today? Did you, take your supplement? It always helps until you start to become aware yourself and accountable to yourself. And you start buying into it. It's not worth going backwards, right? It's not worth like having 7 good days and then, you have 7 more good days, but you really didn't do what you're supposed to do. And then all of a sudden the bottom is, comes out from under you. And then you're back to where you were. I see that in my coaching when I have a woman that does really well eating for 30 days and then she falls off the wagon and feels like crap for like 3 days. And she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, the good news is now you know what you really felt like for the last 5 years and didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And, and so now that it, and now your question has to be, is it worth it? Is, the weekend of what you just did worth another week of not feeling good? And that's part of life though. See, and I think that's another stigma that happens. We either have it all together all the time or we don't. And we buy people's highlight reels thinking that that's their life 100 times, 100% of the time, or, it's not. And that's not true. I mean, people are out there showing their highlight reels and, they're living in their mom's basement. They don't really have it all together. They just want you to think they do. And we can't compare that. We have to compare our life to our life. I mean, we're our biggest and only competitor, really. And that's really hard. We have to look at the mirror every day and compete with who's in the mirror, not who's on social media.
Yeah. Well, and you touched on something that was kind of big because you had mentioned if you have somebody in your corner, and at the time when I was going through that, I had just gotten a divorce the year before. And so, every time I went through like a really big depression, especially my biggest depressions, I find that it was not long, like especially within a year after having been in a car accident. And when I had my brain scanned, I had traumatic brain injury. You can still see it. And
Yeah.
so that's a huge red flag. But again, at the time, I didn't really have anybody in my corner, but now I do. And so I think it's definitely helpful, like you said, when you have somebody in your corner where, much like if you're sick with the flu, you can't go to the store to get just the simple things that you need to hold it together while you're having the flu, or just to get a glass of water. Sometimes it's helpful to have somebody go get the glass of water and bring it to you,
Yeah.
So I think it's really helpful, even if you have a friend, like you said, maybe they don't live with you, but it's just that someone that you can call up, even if you don't talk, or you just sit and watch TV together on the phone. My sister and I used to do that. We used to watch, I lived in Ohio and they lived in Wisconsin, and we'd call each other up and we'd watch the movie at the same time, and be like, oh my gosh, did you just see what he did? Things like that. I
Yeah.
think it's very helpful when you have somebody, even if you're not talking about it, whatever it is, it's just helpful to have somebody in your corner and to be with.
Yeah. Absolutely. Human connection. There's nothing like it. Or a cat or a dog.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got to have, something that, and dogs and cats are unconditional love. But, I dropped my boys off one time at my best friend's house, and I literally dropped them off and left. And I went back to my house, and she was, I guess, somewhere, I don't know, in the bathroom. I don't know. She evidently came through the house and asked Asia, because the boys were there, and she said, well, where's Crystal? And Asia said, well, she's left. And Gay was like, left? Like, what do you mean she left? Like, she just dropped the kids off and left? And she got in her car and came straight to my house, because she was like, no, something's off. And so I think we all have those friends. And that's another thing that's going on in society right now and in today's world, is everybody's so busy, and everybody's got their own stuff. Yet in a moment, that's all it takes, is a moment to just tap into something's off. And I need to make that call. I need to get in my car and go, whatever it is. And I think we need more of that. You can't be too busy for your friends or the people that are in your life. They're in your life for a reason, not just, to work with. I think that we miss out on that today, and we're all busy. I have a lot going on in my life right now. And I'm so grateful for even some of the people that I work with, like you, and, Melvin, especially Melvin sent me a scripture this morning out of the blue, just such a blessing to me. But we don't do enough of that. We just don't, as a society. I think we're all just caught up in our own little stuff, and then, we wonder, what if, we have friends here now wondering, what if they, our friend that just committed suicide, what if we'd have picked up on that? Or what, there's always those things that you think of afterwards, and then that's hard, because the people that are left behind have all the guilt and the things that go with that. So you may not be in pain anymore in a certain way, but everyone else around is. And I think we call that playing the tape all the way through. We have to play the tape all the way through when we have these thoughts and these ideas that come up in our head. Because if we get stuck and we allow it to keep us stuck in those thoughts, then that's when, like you said, you get closer and closer to the drain, and before you know it, the lights are out, and that's a tragedy for everyone for countless years to come, because there's going to be a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a friend, a kid, an adult, child, someone, multiple people who are going to have an inevitable hole in their heart and in their soul that you didn't intend on happening, but is going to happen for them, and nothing will ever be able to take that away from them. And that's a pain that will never go away. And then the cycle continues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pain is not their fault, but healing is their responsibility. And how do you do that? How do you heal from that? How do you heal? So it's a lot easier if we all can just get out of ourselves long enough to say, what if, why is this happening to me? What am I to learn? What is this trying to teach me? Is there anything I can get out of this and learn and give? There's all these questions, and I think Michael Beckwith is one of the best that teaches that. He was one of the teachers that I got in the late mid 2000s, I think 2013, 14, 15, and 16. I worked really closely with him. I worked really closely with Jim Rohn before that in the late 90s, before he passed away in early 2000. But Michael Beckwith is one of the best at that, in the meditating, because you really do have to start asking better questions. And Doc is really good with that, in the Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. You've got to ask better questions of yourself and of your life. And, but it is hard when you're in the midst of that. I know, but I think it goes back to, there's always going to be someone in your life. But I think you either need to have the vulnerability to reach out to them and say, hey, I need some help. And we need to be more compassionate and graceful and forward in offering that. Like Dr. Olds, if Dr. Olds hadn't have offered that day, I never would have asked. First of all, I didn't know anything about NET, and that would be helpful and save my life and free me in ways I wouldn't be free today, and heal me in ways I wouldn't be healed today. I'm so grateful for that. It didn't take me years of therapy. It didn't take me thousands of dollars sitting in somebody's chair to talk about my past and how horrible it had been and all the mistakes I made. It just took a few sessions, of getting to the root cause of where my brain was really at and where my, my nervous system was at, to be able to release that. I mean, I would never have known. So I think it's important, because like people like you that are out here giving people opportunity that are at home alone, wondering, is it ever going to get better? To see that there are opportunities to take those steps for it to get better. And it will, one step at a time. It didn't happen overnight. And I've had a lot happen to me since then. And like you said, I think no matter how long you go in between those times too, like this friend of ours that committed suicide a few weeks, that really took a toll on me when another friend did it too. I mean, within days. And I felt myself getting into a sunken place over that, because it took me back to that time in my life where I felt that way. And it made me so sad, because I know what that feels like. And so, I had to get the tools out of my toolbox and reach out and kind of work my way through that, because that kind of threw me for a loop. I didn't expect that to happen, but it did. And so, you may never, it always becomes a part of your story, but that's, again, part of why we're all here. I mean, we're on this show tonight because of the things that we've been through. If we hadn't have been through them, we wouldn't be on here. And I think that it's important that people understand that, like Dr. Beckwith, Michael Beckwith says, it's reality with a capital R, not reality in our little mind. Our little mind wants us to think things like someone's highlight reel or this or that. And that's not reality with a capital R at all. And so having access to these things that are all free, it's another thing I hear all the time is, well, I don't have the money. NET will cost you, but you can go online and research it yourself. Wayne Dyer was a huge advocate of NET. But Michael Beckwith, he's free. You can go on and meditate with him every Sunday, free. And you can replay it every day, free. There's a lot of things out there that are free. But again, you have to be willing to look at things differently, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And that's, you brought up what was it? NEC?
NET.
NET. See, I had never heard of that before too. So now I'm doubly glad that I asked you on, because that's a whole nother thing that I'm trying to introduce people to. Also, I think they're used to, if you have depression or anxiety or stress, or, you either get a medication or talk therapy. Those are the things, that are introduced to you. And again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those.
Right.
But those are not the only things that are out there. Mm-hmm. I want people to be aware that there's a plethora of other options, that are out there, right down to, and then also that it's not one thing that causes these things. Like you said, Candida was contributing to some of your things. Most traditional doctors do not even test for Candida, let alone, so there are reasons why your body only has so many ways it can share with you symptoms for telling you, hello, something's wrong. It literally can't say those words. So it has to come out in some way, shape, or form to tell you, hey, start looking here, or start looking, even if you don't know where, just start looking. So that way it can eventually lead you to figuring out what that root cause is. So that way then your brain can heal or your body can heal. Because if you don't start looking, it's really just information.
Yes, you have to ask better questions. And so I think, again, finding a chiropractor who is a functional chiropractor or a chiropractor that specializes in kinesiology is so vital. And a lot of these visits, you can do for $45, $50, $60 a session, that you can go in and they can literally see where you're not only out of alignment, but where your body is deficient and where there's things going on that shouldn't be going on, and in the NET, neuroemotive therapy, there's so many people certified in NET. And a lot of the kinesiology chiropractors are certified. In fact, the one that I went to a year and a half ago, very, very good chiropractor. And I'm very picky because I had a L3-4-5 fusion in my lower back. So my fourth vertebrae in my lower lumbar was completely shattered. So they took part of my hip bone and created one, and then fused 3-4-5 together. And then I had 2 metal rods up and down my spine for 2.5 years. And then I had a fiberglass brace that was molded for my body that I wore for 6 months that I couldn't be out of unless I was neck deep in water or flat on my back. And so, when I stumbled across Dr. Olds, it was because I was sick and I went into the hospital. I went into the emergency room. Then I ended up being hospitalized the second time. I was so dehydrated, they didn't hardly get an IV in me, and they just had someone die at the hospital 2 days before that from dehydration, which was scary. I never knew you could do that.
Yeah.
And then they let me out. And then 2 days later, I was still sick as I was almost before I went into the hospital. And that's when this lady that I worked with said, you should go see Chuck because, he does kinesiology. Maybe he'll figure out what's wrong. And he did. It was Candida. But if you can find a chiropractor who does kinesiology and then someone who does NET, you're going to know where your deficiencies are. You're going to be able to get some healing in ways that really are so low cost, and they don't have to go on your medical record if you don't want them to, because sometimes that's, for me, that was a hindrance. They're not going to prescribe you medication, So for me, 5-HTP was a lifesaver. It helped me with my anxiety and the depression. It kind of balanced those neurotransmitters out. And then I was able to get on more of a diet that, worked for me. And then, I again, it was a God thing. I was led to a different kind of workout that I hadn't experienced before called Fusion with Jennifer Nicole Lee. I ended up being certified in her method and teaching her method. And And really through that came even more healing because of the way that the workouts were designed, the things that we did, the way that the brain was fed dopamine, the blood flow, the detox. I mean, it was just a revolutionary mind, body, soul program that put it all together. And so I'm just saying these are all things that don't cost anything,
Right.
and or very little, that you can do that can bring you full circle to where, you're making that 180-degree turn. You don't want to go 360 because you're back where you get started, but you're making that 180 into a better life. And so, and then the meditation, obviously I wasn't into meditation, but just studying with Michael Beckwith and those meditations really helped me tremendously, again, rewire my brain. And even the Satanama meditation, that's free. Anybody can YouTube that. But just sitting with Michael and meditating was really very, very beneficial. So those are the things that, I try to tell people all the time. What you think, what you eat, what you drink, and the amount of sleep you get are some of the best in this, some supplements that you may take. For me, it's magnesium. I don't need 5-HTP anymore. I'm healed. But for a year and a half, I needed it every day. And if I didn't take it, I was on my way to crazy town half the time, wondering what was wrong, why I wasn't okay. But now it's just magnesium. It's the big thing, and vitamin D3. Those are the two that I don't live without, no matter what.
Right.
But that, again, that's a journey, guys. I mean, you're just going to go through life, and you're going to go through seasons. And I'm going through perimenopause, so there's different things now that I'm going to need that I didn't need years before. But it's just the way you look at it. For things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. And you're not a tree. It can change. You just have to change the questions you're asking.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard Dr. Amen say that before. And I actually have heard 2 other doctors and providers mention that before. And it's so very true when you sit and think about it, and sometimes you just don't know what questions to ask, but eventually I think sometimes you just have to really get in tune with your body and listen to your body so you can explain the best you can to somebody. But eventually you're going to get to the right person who's going to know what you're asking and needing anyways. So when they really listen to you, they will then point you in the right direction, even if it's a test to confirm what they're saying and thinking and saying, yes, this is what it is. This is what we can now do to help you with whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you use kinesiology, I mean, your body will tell you what you're deficient in. So that's the beautiful thing about that is, you can go to someone and that's how I knew, like, my body's always going to need magnesium at a level that most people, it's a lot, but my body has been through a lot of trauma, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so it eats through magnesium. So it's really important for me, but I never would have known that. And I never would have known that it was connected to some of the depression and the anxiety, and obviously a lot of the physical stuff I was going through, if I hadn't have had kinesiology, because that my body told me, which will freak you out when you go through that, because you're like, wait a minute, this is like, crazy, but it's for real. So, even that alone, like I tell people, you should just don't knock it till you try it. But those are the things that you can do. And again, you're not spinning your wheels. And I think that's what's so sad these days is I see people coming just barely with any hope in life anymore because they've been to every doctor. They've been on 5 or 6 medications. They've been through treatment. They've been to therapists, they're therapied to death, and they still feel broken. And that's not okay, because there are answers out there. And Doc's right. I mean, we don't know till we look. I found answers before SPECT, but we see a lot of people today that are just, again, like you said, I mean, we hang on to every commercial, every social reel, everything that's out there that looks flashy and good. And then when it doesn't work, then we're back to, well, what's wrong with me and why am I so broken? And maybe, life isn't worth living. And that's not true at all. It's just that you haven't found what the root cause of everything is in you. And I never would have thought that all of the things that I had taken in from childhood on would have played such a major role in my own mental well-being and coming to the brink of just wanting to say, maybe I should just, call it a day.
Yeah. Well, and that's a perfect segue because on Sunday, we sang the song at church. And then yesterday, God bless Melvin, he sent same song to me in Teams. And I said, oh my gosh, it's so funny that you sent that to me because I was going to talk to you about and read some of the words if I could about this song. And I said how it's going to be the song for my Forgiven Friday. Every Friday I do a Forgiven Friday song and I'd put a different song up. I said, that's what my song's going to be as well. So it kind of fits in and goes well with our topic. So I'd like to read some of the words.
Sure.
Again, it's called Made for More by Josh Baldwin. And it says, I know who I am because I know who you are. The cross of salvation was only the start. Now I am chosen, free and forgiven. I have a future and it's worth the living. You called out my name, so I'll sing out your praise. Hallelujah. You buried my past. I'm not going back. I wasn't made to be tending a grave. I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours and I was made for more.
Wow.
And I thought, I know, it was like so profound and it like hit me on Sunday when we sang it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to find the name of that song. And so then, yeah, he shared it with me. I'm like, oh, that's going to go, I think it's going to fit well with how I was feeling and now how I feel now that, just coming that full circle and, I'm complete 180 from what I was all those years ago, and I don't want to go back and I was made for more. And I see that now, but if you would have asked me that 19 years ago, I wouldn't have never thought that,
But that's where the devil wants everyone. He wants them to be stuck. And he wants them to feel like a season is a sentence. And, it's just, and we don't go through things because we're being punished or because we're not worthy. Every story in the Bible is from someone who really went through a lot of stuff. I mean, most of the people in the Bible, they're the only ones that made the Bible. It's because they went through a lot of stuff and came out on the other side. And some of them went through a lot of really bad things, and some of them did a lot of really bad things, and they still came out on the other side and had an incredible story to share from that. So I think, it goes back to, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. It doesn't mean the weapons aren't going to come and that they're not going to form. It just means that they're not going to prosper if we choose to not let them. And that's where, we get stuck. And faith it's hard to have faith when you're in the midst of the darkness. But I know that every one of us have a purpose and a reason to be here. And someone out there, Gabby Bernstein said this to me in 2014 when we were all in a conference with her. And she said, it's important that you make it through whatever it is you're going through because someone else out there is praying that you make it so that they can have the courage to make it too. And it made a lot of sense because I thought of all the people out there just like me that might be suffering in silence who thought there's just no way. And what if I hadn't have had the courage to look at things differently and to ask better questions and to get around some people, even when I didn't feel like it, like you said, to empower me to help me look at things differently, that then led to me, showing up at someone's doctor's office, that, all of those things were divinely appointed. And I, yes, had to make those steps. But what if I hadn't have done that? Then I wouldn't be here today. So somebody else can have the courage to take that journey as well.
Well, it was such a delight to have you on. I can't wait to actually meet you in person. We just work online together all the time.
I know.
So why don't you tell my listeners where they can find you or follow you, possibly on social media or anywhere else?
Sure.
Book an appointment with you, maybe?
Yeah, they can go to, on Facebook, you can go to my Crazy Beautiful page. It's Crazy Beautiful Inc., Changing the Face of Fitness. That's where I'm at on Facebook. It's the best place probably to reach me. And I mean, I'm on Instagram, but that's under, my own personal page. But Crazy Beautiful Inc., Changing the Face of Fitness.
I always ask my guests also before at the end of every episode for their don't miss this moment. It's kind of like the one key takeaway that they would want somebody to really remember or think about from our conversation today. So what would your don't miss this moment be?
It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to not say you're not okay. Tell someone, I'm not okay today. And that's okay. You can tell me, you can reach out to me, but tell someone.
Yeah. And that's perfectly said, isn't it? That's one commercial I'm a little bit happier about, where the two kids are sitting on the couch. The girls are sitting on the couch, and the one girl says, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then she's like, "Are you really?" And then they
Oh, yes.
go into the commercial. I will say that out of commercials, as far as commercials go, I'm glad that those commercials are now a little more prevalent because, I want people to know that it's okay. And it's okay to not want to talk about it. Just still tell somebody so they know kind of where you're at, just so they can be with you, Yeah. So,
yeah. Like you said, even if it's just on the phone, watching a movie together, saying nothing. Yeah.
It's just something. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight and taking time out of your schedule, because life is hectic for everybody I know. So I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Love you.
If you are looking for a trustworthy place to choose all of your supplements, FullScript has 285 different brands to choose from. They did the work for you to check quality standards for all the supplements they carry. These standards are important because they help to ensure a product is safe, effective, and accurately labeled. FullScript uses third-party companies to provide unbiased assurance that certain quality criteria are met when they add a company or product to their inventory. When you set up an account with FullScript, use my link and you'll always get 15% off your supplements. If you want to continue learning and hearing all things nutrition for your mind, body, and soul, click like, subscribe, or favorite me on whatever podcast platform you use, or you can find me at ForgivenNutritionist.com. This podcast was designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to achieve your health and wellness goals. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any illness or medical condition or take the place of any treatments from your current healthcare providers.